In this video, I am going to briefly introduce some terminology related to the nature of value. One day after school, I was unpacking my son's backpack, and tucked into one of his books was a folded-up piece of paper. Thinking that it was just a scrap piece of paper, I promptly threw it into the recycling bin. When my son was ready to begin his homework, he opened the book and said, "Where's my paper airplane?" with a very concerned look on his face. I told him that I thought it was just a scrap piece of paper, and I had thrown it away. My son then told me about how his friend at school made it for him, and then he said that the paper airplane was very special to him. Suppose in defense of my actions I react angrily and say, "What are you talking about? It's just paper." What I am saying to my son is that the airplane should not be that special to him, because since it's just paper, it really doesn't have any objective value, or the kind of value that things have independently of whether anyone values them. But would this be the correct way to respond? I don't think it would be. Although since the airplane is just made of paper, it doesn't really have any objective value, it certainly is the case that it has subjective value to my son. This is when the value of something does depend upon someone actually valuing it. But the reason why the airplane has subjective value for my son is because it is a token of friendship. The airplane was given to him by a friend. And friendship does have objective value. For myself, to the extent that I value my son and think that my son is a being of inherent worth, I ought to take the things my son values into consideration. So in this circumstance, what did giving my son consideration amount to? That's right. It amounted to me fishing his paper airplane out of the recycling bin and trying to make it look like the original paper airplane, just with a little more folds and creases. Another important distinction regarding value is the distinction between intrinsic value and instrumental value. To say that something has intrinsic value means that it is inherently good or it is desirable for its own sake. On the other hand, something has instrumental value if it is desirable as a means to something else. Here is an example that might be helpful. As early as the late 1400s, sailors were able to diagnose a condition known as scurvy, which is a disease caused by a deficiency in vitamin C. Now, sailors at this time had no idea that vitamin C existed, and hence they had no desires to consume vitamin C in order to avoid scurvy. Consuming vitamin C was not the sort of thing that sailors actually valued. However, sailors did know that consuming citrus fruits and drinking citrus juice did prevent scurvy. And since they desired to avoid scurvy, they desired to consume citrus fruits. So the sailors actually desired to consume citrus fruits, but it was desirable for sailors to consume vitamin C. Sailors knew that consuming citrus fruit prevented scurvy, but they had no true beliefs concerning the reason why this was the case. Citrus fruits contain a lot of vitamin C. Now, but if the sailors did know that consuming vitamin C was actually what was preventing scurvy and not just the citrus fruits, they would desire getting enough vitamin C for that reason. So, getting enough vitamin C has objective value. Consuming vitamin C is effective at preventing scurvy, and that does not at all depend upon anyone's beliefs or desires concerning it. However, it is also the case that consuming vitamin C really only has instrumental value. Getting enough vitamin C is only desirable as a means to some other end. The last thing I will discuss here are two common misconceptions regarding intrinsic and instrumental value. The first misconception is that things cannot have both intrinsic and instrumental value, and the second misconception is that things with intrinsic value are always more important than things with instrumental value. Let's start with the first objection. Think for a moment about what value there is in eating. In a biological sense, we eat to take in nutrition in order to survive. In this respect, eating has instrumental value. Now, but we could accomplish all of the instrumental ends associated with eating just by consuming a flavorless cracker that contains all of the protein, vitamins, and other nutrients that we need every day. But if we were to do so, wouldn't we be missing out on so many other goods that are associated with eating? We do not only eat for the instrumental good of taking in nutrition, we also eat because eating is an intrinsically enjoyable experience. And as such, the act of eating has a high degree of intrinsic value. This is especially the case when we eat with others in community. Eating and sharing food with others is a primary way of creating meaning with others, and that is an intrinsic good. Now, what about the second objection? Is there anything really better than going for a walk on the beach to watch the sunset? Why do we do things like this? We do them because they have intrinsic value. We are not going to the beach to watch the sunset so that we can do something else, maybe go to a bar that's on the beach. The purpose of the activity is just to do the activity. So, going for a walk on the beach to watch the sunset has a high degree of intrinsic value, but little to no instrumental value. Now, despite the fact that going for a walk on the beach has high intrinsic value, would it make sense to skip a necessary surgery in order to do so? Having surgery has little to no intrinsic value. We do not have surgery for the sake of having surgery. In fact, we try to avoid having surgery unless it's absolutely necessary. But in these kinds of circumstances, having surgery has a high degree of instrumental value. As such, you should not skip such an important surgery just to go for a walk on the beach. But if this is the case, things with intrinsic value are not always more important than things with instrumental value. So please, go and have the surgery, especially if having it is necessary to enjoy any future walks on the beach.